What's going on, everybody? John here with MachMotorsport, and today we are doing our 10,000 kilometer ownership review. So if you watched my last video, which is actually an overview of the accident repair that happened on my vehicle shortly after taking possession of my vehicle, just a quick recap. Basically, got the vehicle on my 40th birthday, took possession 3 days later, or 2 days later. My fiance and I were rear-ended on our way to a weekend getaway, and it really sucked. I was really bummed out because, you know, and basically the short of the long of it is, if you guys know and you've been in the industry long enough, you'll know that no matter who's repairing the car, even the best people repairing the car, it's never going to be the same. In the last video, I basically did a really quick teardown of the very things that I couldn't see or couldn't get around or couldn't get an idea of, just to kind of see what kind of shape everything was in and how the repair was done. And albeit the repair was done by my brother, which I trust. So Adam, if you're watching this, I do trust your work. But again, it was more of a, hey, let's have a look and see what was done. And in my findings, everything was actually repaired really, really well. To be quite honest, I don't think any body shop would have repaired it to the extent that they did. And if you want to watch the video. I'll bloop it somewhere around here somewhere, and you'll see I included photos and video of the repair step by step that my brother was kind enough to film and document for me and then send to me. So here we are today, 10,000 kilometers into ownership of my 2018 STI. And what are my thoughts? Well, you know what? Having had come from my track built BRZ, and if you guys have been watching the channel long enough, you'll know about that car, to the Type R, to another BRZ, back to the STI. What are some of the things that I really liked and appreciated about those cars versus this car? And now having this for 10,000 kilometers, I have yet to take it to a track, yet to really push it to its limit. So I can't speak on behalf of it, capability on a track. However, I have definitely had some experiences kind of on road through some of the nice tight twisty, roads that I've got around here. And we had just come out of winter as well, to give you guys an idea of what I feel. Now, the STI is a very capable car on its own, as most of you will know. Tuned by Subaru, this is the pinnacle of their OEM option in terms of what you can get right out of the dealer floor. Of course, everything can be improved upon when it's in your ownership. We'll say about the STI versus the BRZ, the track prepped one, the stock one, and even the Type R, is the STI sucks when it comes to handling, okay? It is not as razor sharp as the Type R, for instance, or even the stock BRZ. My track car was a track car. It had, amazing precise handling, really good steering input, does feel very neutral even at the limit, and the Type R was a weapon on the fucking track. And I can tell you right now that the STI is driveline itself being quite dated. Even the suspension really lacks that precision. I feel that in a daily driven, this is adequate, but when you start to really push the limits of this car, or the limitations of the tires, for instance, you really start to feel where this car does not hold its own versus the other cars. And it's kind of unfortunate because when we start talking about the driveline, sure, the driveline in itself is quite dated, but the suspension, the chassis, this chassis is going back to 2015, so it's not really that old. It's only maybe slightly older than the Type R by, a couple of years, and still quite slightly newer than the BRZ. So why does this not handle with that precision? And a lot of that is going to have to do probably due to the fact that driveline layout, where the engine is positioned so far forward of the front axle, that you do have this inherent understeer, and you do have a vehicle that does feel quite heavy. Out of all the vehicles that I mentioned, the BRZ and the Type R, this is the heaviest of the bunch, and honestly, it really demonstrates that on a regular basis. When you're going through around the corners, or you're going through, a switchback, you're going through these twisties, you can really feel that transition of weight back and forth with this car versus the other cars. The BRZ had such a flat, very neutral feeling to it, and again, because of the low center of gravity, because the engine was positioned further back, had more neutral feeling, more neutral balance. So when you're going through tight turns and the twisties, the BRZ really felt planted. It felt more composed, whereas in this feels like it does wash out a lot, and you have to kind of control it and control your input, the speed and the braking. And the Type R just felt like it was very eager to rotate. So again, when we start looking at the dynamic of a car in terms of its overall appeal and its handling characteristics, this is where this car really does feel quite out of place when compared to those cars. Now, power-wise, I want to say that this definitely feels obviously more powerful than the BRZ, even my track prep one with all the bolt-ons and all that other stuff. So in a straight line, the STI really shines in terms of its power and the capability there. The Type R felt very light on its feet, but for a heavier car, the STI still feels just as quick in my opinion. It doesn't feel as nimble through the corners, but in a straight line, the STI certainly feels as quick as the Type R, and there is something to be said for that because this is a heavier car. The gearbox in this car is superior to almost any of them in terms of its feeling of robustness, but I want to say the Type R on a good day, when it didn't grind in second gear and it didn't lock you out of fourth, felt very precise. And the BRZ felt probably the most sporty of the bunch. It felt very nice, ratchet feel, but the STI feels robust. I've never had a gear grind in this. When you put it in, it's notchy. It feels like it kind of feels like you're driving a truck, which is not what you want. Engine, the Type R, hands down, sounded the best out of it. It was eager to rev, loved to rev, and it felt very free to do so. The BRZ, yeah, felt okay. It lacked power, but it certainly didn't feel... it didn't feel like it struggled to get the power going. The STI, it definitely feels... It doesn't scream by any means. It doesn't feel eager to rev. I think a lot of that has to do with its design, or it just feels rather restricted when in comparison to the other two engines. Here we have an opportunity. Like, yes, it moves and it goes, but it definitely feels not smooth, not at all. But it doesn't feel like it's gonna rattle itself apart. It just doesn't feel smooth. Braking, that's a tough one. So track BRZ with the Project Mu pads that I had in it and the upgraded fluid and everything, outstanding. The car was also light. It had a lot more brakes than the weight of the car, so it would outbrake its capability 100%. The stock BRZ, good, adequate. I feel with just a switcheroo of pads, even with the base model brakes, so not the Brembos in that BRZ, that's adequate. I had that in my other FRS, and it was amazing. The Type R felt very good. In a panic situation, the Type R would stop very well. On the track, very good. The STI, I've got the obviously the bigger 6-pot Brembos here, and the 2 pots out back. It feels good. However, my one and only gripe is that these rotors are already fucked. They, under braking, I have the worst fucking vibration, and it's because the rotors are out of round. There are replacement options out there. There's the gyro disc, there's the PFC brakes. So there are some options. Even StopTech makes a really good OEM replacement. I haven't really decided which way I'm gonna go. And that's gonna lead into kind of the end of this video. I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna keep the STI much longer. And the reason for that is between the accident and everything that happened there, I already know that I'm gonna lose my shirt on this vehicle. So do I maintain it as a daily and pick up something else as a track car? Because ultimately what I'm looking for is I want to start tracking again. As capable as the STI is, I don't think it's as capable as a lot of cars out there, especially when we start looking at the cost. The cost to modify an STI and the consumables on the STI start to really take away its appeal in terms of making it a weekend/track car, because there are other vehicles out there that start to look more like a better option when we look at the consumables, the cost to modify, and even just their capabilities. If you've got an endless budget, the STI will make an amazing track car, as is with most cars if you have an endless budget. But because I don't have an endless budget, and I am trying to keep it relatively inexpensive so that I can justify the cost to race, the cost to pour money into a vehicle without receiving any money in return, all of a sudden you start to wonder, okay, well, what's out there? If you're looking from like a completely daily driven, one car does everything well, the STI is right up there, I would say, alongside with the Type R. Very good cars for that, very capable. I would argue that the STI is an even better car in terms of, if you live in an area where there's, inclement weather, specifically snow, the STI might be the best option. Throw a set of pads on here, upgrade the fluid, put on some sticky rubber, do something about the suspension, maybe do some RCE yellows, like in terms of like the springs, and you might have a very good weekend track / daily driven car. But when we start looking at getting competitive in a racing sense, all of a sudden the STI is now looking like it has potential, but at a very expensive price. And when you start looking at the cost to modify the STI to be competitive in the categories around here, all of a sudden you're like, shit, for the cost to modify the STI on its own, I can buy X car and modify it and have a far more competitive car and keep the STI as a daily. So like, it doesn't take long. This shit adds up, man. 20 grand later in the STI, yeah, it'll be a pretty cool car, and it may be fun to drive, but it's still not going to be super competitive. And all of a sudden, for $20,000, I can buy XYZ, modify XYZ, and now have a dedicated car for weekends and track duty that doesn't interrupt my day-to-day car, nor affect its reliability or fuel mileage. So, yeah, I'm tossing around a lot of things. But in closing, the STI has been great. I love it. It's been a great daily. To this point, I would say that it's been a much better daily than my Type R. I do love the Type R. I'm not here to knock the Type R. Looking for a vehicle that's a good daily, that is an absolute weapon on the racetrack in stock form. The Type R is certainly one of the best, in my opinion. However, in closing, if I had the option of having a good daily, the STI is an amazing daily, but I would definitely need another car for track duties, because at the end of the day, I don't really know that this car is going to be it. And I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll keep this and continue to pursue the track option and then get something else. Maybe I'll get something else and keep this. Or maybe I'll get rid of this and get something else, like an automatic, something that's good on fuel, and then get something as a track car. I don't know. So, anyways, STI's been great for the last 10,000 kilometers. The repair was done very well, but the future of the STI is unknown. So we'll leave it there. Thanks for watching, guys. Always like and subscribe. Thank you so much for supporting me and the channel. and we'll see you in the next one.